All right, I am recording and going live. All right, I will go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the City Council for September 6, 2022. First item of business is invocation and pledge of allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to come together and do the people's business. Lord, I ask for your blessing this evening and that you grant us wisdom and understanding so that we may do the will of the people. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the August 15th regular meeting. Y'all have received a copy of that.
Motion to approve. Second.
I've got a motion to approve the minutes for the August 15th regular meeting. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. Next order of business is public comment. I have 2 public comment cards. If you could just come on down, state your name and address for the record. First up is Miss Patty Robinson.
There's nothing like being first. If you would, just take one and pass it. Patty Robinson, Ridgeland Drive, 23-year resident in Maumel. I'm sure some of you remember me from 2021 when I was here to plead that the specific breed ban be kept in place that protected Maumel for decades. By majority of votes by this council, that ban was lifted. I remember Mr. Holt's impassioned plea, but 5 others voted it down. What was predicted then has come to pass. As soon as I heard about the gentleman being attacked and his small dog killed by 2 pit bull mixed dogs, I was shocked and saddened, but not surprised. When I read the police report and the animal control reports, it brought the horror more into focus, as well as concern for how sloppily it had been handled. And when I read reports from those affected, it made me realize this could happen anywhere, anytime, to anyone in Maumel, because we simply do not have regulations or ordinances in place to protect us, our children, our pets from irresponsible pet owners with dangerous, unpredictable dogs. When this council voted to adopt Ordinance 1022 just 1 year ago, the specific breed bans that had been on the books and protected us for decades were removed, but no protections for residents were put into place to protect us. Little Rock allows residents to own pit bulls, bull breeds, pit bull mixed dogs with specific regulations geared toward protecting everyone. I've provided each one of you a copy of those regulations today. While I believe eliminating the dangerous breed bans was a bad decision on the part of this council, I believe adopting these regulations that they use in Little Rock would be a good place to start in remedying the dangers that Maumel residents face today and every day. Of course, I want the breed bans put back in place, but this would be a huge step forward to make our communities a little bit safer. And I ask every council member and the mayor to support this proposal immediately, because what happened on August 24th will happen again. But next time it could be a fatality, it could be disfigurement of a child, or it could happen to someone you love. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Next public comment is from Tricia Morin. Hopefully I said that right?
Yep.
If you could please state your name and an address for us, please.
Tricia Morin, I live on Sagamore Court. So thanks for having me today, and thanks for the opportunity for public comment. First of all, on behalf of the whole city, we want to express our deep grief in what happened to that person at that attack. That's awful, and hate to hear about that happening. From what I understand, in the last year or so, a lab, an Akita, and a German Shepherd have all attacked in Maumel. So to quote the last speaker, it could happen at any time. We never know. This is the first time it's happened with one dog that's been categorized as a pit bull mix. The other one, from what we understand, might not be categorized that way. The police report reflected what was reported by a citizen, which is an opinion. So the present attack was a single occurrence. Now, if there's a band of loose pit bulls accosting strollers weekly, yes, let's revisit the regulations we have in place. This was a single attack, so in a year. And as far to quote the last speaker, it's bound to happen. Yes, it's bound to happen. That's why we have precautions in place, which you guys put in place in the form of the animal ordinance. The city has done their job in this instance. Let's let them continue to do their job. Sorry, I was scratching on my notes. I was sitting down there. I didn't plan on speaking. So, pit bull is really a broad generalization. It's not like a breed like a dachshund or something like that. It's based on characteristics like the boxy face, muscular build, and things of that nature. So it's not like a single breed. So I would like, and I don't know for sure, I would like to know, and I know y'all can't respond, but have there been more attacks other than those 3 that I mentioned and now this 4th one? I'd be curious to know what commonalities they had. So again, I just want to thank you for letting me speak and for taking care of our city and doing your job. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. With that, next item is financial statement review. That'll be at the 2nd meeting of the month. Department reports. I'm going to go ahead and give the department report basically from the mayor's office. There's a lot of projects that don't fit neatly into any of the departments, so I get asked the status of these quite a bit, so I'll go ahead and go through them. The first one is the status of the White Oak Crossing Roundabout. That has been under design for what seems like forever. We finally have full engineering approval for that roundabout, and we are in the process of acquiring rights-of-way. In fact, one of the resolutions on the agenda tonight is permission to purchase that right-of-way, which is the primary parcel. As soon as that primary parcel is acquired, they can begin the utility relocation, and then following that, the actual bidding of that project. So we'll be talking about that a little bit in Resolution 2022-41. The next item is an update on the all-inclusive playground. The council may remember that y'all appropriated $300,000 of ARPA money with the idea that we'd go ahead and apply for a grant through state parks. That grant application has been submitted for $250,000. We're hoping to hear back soon, and we're hoping to hear that we got it, and we're hoping to hear that we got all $250,000. So as soon as we find out something on that, we'll pass that along to y'all. Next is Crystal Hill Road reconstruction. For anyone who hasn't driven down there recently, you can now drive all the way from Maumel Boulevard to Counts Massey, and from Counts Massey up on pavement, on paved asphalt. The only part of the road that still needs to be worked on is that little tail south of Counts Massey on Crystal Hill Road, as well as the side path that goes alongside. The road needs to be constructed, some landscaping, and then just some minor issues related to that. One of the issues that we do need to talk about, we'll be talking about it in resolution later on, is we had originally designed that road with an 8-foot side path from roughly where the park on the river is up to Maumel Boulevard, which was appropriately sized if you weren't going to have a regional greenway going down there. Now that that regional greenway is there, we have the option of widening that from 8 feet to 12 feet, and that fits in the right-of-way. If the widening of that side path is something that we're going to want to do at some point, it makes more sense to do it when we're constructing it to begin with. So we'll be talking about that later on tonight. Just an update on the Maumel Mile, or the Club Manor corridor. Y'all may recall that there was $300,000 appropriated from ARPA funds to basically engineer Club Manor corridor from 4 lanes down to 2 lanes, include the side path. That engineering is underway, but we are also working to see if we can work through Metro Plan to get a portion of that paid for through that grant, which would then sort of, free up that 80% of that 300,000. That's still a little bit iffy. If we can get that, we'll certainly be looking at giving that a shot. Also related to that is the Club Manor to Lake Willisteen side path. Y'all may remember that at the end of last year, we identified an old grant from 2011 that had, we'd been given through RDOT to build a sidewalk on Club Manor. Well, we came in and we had some urgency because RDOT said, once we realized it was still open, RDOT said we can go ahead and use that money for a side path connecting Lake Willisteen to Club Manor, but that we had to have construction complete in 5 months. Well, that meant engineering it, getting approvals, and then, construction began in that 5 months. Unfortunately, it took 5 months from the time we submitted the 30% plans to RDOT to get their approval or their feedback on the 30% plans. So that's still underway. We think we have 90% plans submitted this week, and we may have actually got them submitted on Friday. And so we'll see how that goes. We've kind of jumped some steps and are just submitting later proposals because RDOT is being very meticulous of the 4-page engineering plans. So hope to know more about that. The Gateway Park, which is the food truck park and farmers market pavilion that we have tentatively spoke about to go at the location of the old courthouse, a jail, police department, fire department, miscellaneous storage building, and everything else that's out there. Y'all approved money for a planning process. We've been going through that planning process. There's been a steering committee that met, got advice, or gave advice to the planners. We sent out a citywide survey, got that feedback. The planners redid those plans. The steering committee meets again this week. Based on the feedback from that, they'll revamp the plans, and then the goal is to hold a public meeting where we can get folks in to really comment on it. It's been a real fun process. We talked about not wanting us or my office to push out what those plans would be, but rather to solicit feedback. Someone on the council, I believe it was you, Councilmember Mosley, maybe suggested a little stage or something like that, which has seemed to find its way in to the plans, which is neat. But we should be holding a public meeting where we want as many people as possible to come out and give feedback on that process. And we'll be announcing that here pretty soon when that'll be. Also, while talking about planning, y'all may recall we're working on the master bike and pedestrian plan. We have a steering committee that has met. It's about 15 folks that represent different entities or groups of folks in the city, everyone from runners, walkers, folks that want to, casual walk with their kids, all the way to representatives of schools, some of the businesses around. One of the things that was interesting with that feedback is they really preferred to, rather than have a series of meetings over months, they wanted to push it together for an intensive week. Currently planned and tentatively planned for October 17th through the 21st is what is expected to be a week-long on-site intensive process that will include several public meetings throughout the week in the evening, as well as consultants on site revamping plans based on the nights before's feedback, meeting with stakeholders, really trying to push that through. They've been doing heavy inventory and analysis of our current system, so that should be exciting when we get more of a plan and can take a more strategic approach to how we're maintaining, improving, and extending our bicycle and pedestrian facilities here in town. The famous Odom crosswalk flashing beacons has been a very interesting process, primarily because we have to reach out to someone who is an expert on that, but then also we can't just purchase it from them because of the cost. So we've We've gone through a number of different steps to make sure that we're following state bidding and purchasing protocols. And so that's all. We've now got it spec'd out, parts, everything's good to go, PO's issued, and we hope to have that ordered here soon. Now, if it's like anything else that we're ordering, don't hold your breath. It's taking forever for us to get anything, including, which is a good segue into City Hall. We've got the sign finally out front. We are supposed to have signs and plaques on that front piece of concrete that have been on order since, I don't know, the 1700s. We hope to get it in here pretty quick. When we do, we'll have probably a little groundbreaking ceremony, raise the flags up front, and just sort of finally finish the City Hall project. Pavement preservation project, y'all may recall that we just wrapped that up last year. That was the plan to study and assess the way our current road inventory, as well as come up with a plan to maintain it more efficiently over the long haul. I gave you all a 5-year schedule. I think in the top of that, I said this is subject to change. Well, it changed before year one. The original goal, you may recall, was to not just so heavily focus on overlays, but to use more of that money on roads that weren't as bad to extend the life of those roads even further. In other words, you get a better bang for your buck if you're using things like cape seals and different sealants that can extend the road. Now, the issue is that the overlay costs for asphalt and that work is so high that we push that off until next year. So instead of doing each of the first 2 years, some with overlays, some sealant, some crack sealing, and just general maintenance, we've pushed all the overlays over to year 2 and then pulled the year 2 cape sealing forward into year 1. We're hoping that we're getting a better deal on cape sealing because we're doing more of it. And then the hope, knock on wood, is that the cost of asphalt and overlays decreases for next year. So if that's the case, we'll be able to stay on track. Even if that asphalt cost is still extremely high, we'll run into issues with that. But anyways, nothing like a good plan that doesn't survive its first moment in the sun. With that, I want to talk about a couple possible future projects, things that we've been looking at internally, just to assess the feasibility of those before we even presented anything to the council or really started talking about it. Sometimes it helps to understand whether it's feasible to begin with. The first one that we've been looking at is a trailhead and a parking lot near the Center on the Lake, that corner property that the city owns. We have several different issues going on. We have, as COVID dies down, we have more and more folks going to the Center on the Lake, which is great, but now we're also hearing the same complaints we heard before COVID, which is lack of parking. Also, since we're looking at the Maumel Mile there, it would be helpful to have a trailhead at that end of the Maumel Mile. So we have the Gateway Park that's designed to be on one end, and we're looking at a trailhead, essentially, on the other end. The best of both worlds, if we can increase parking but create a trailhead that is very aesthetically pleasing as you're kind of entering into what'll be the Maumel City Center and the Maumel Mile there. We have some sketches going forward. The ETC is currently working on a cost estimate, which is the scary part, because you can put out a lot of great drawings, then see the cost and run for the hills. But as soon as we get that, I'll be bringing that forward just as a talking point to see if that's something we want to use ARPA money for. Likewise, pickleball courts is something that we've been hearing a lot of for quite a long time. I have, and Sarah Smith, my former chief of staff, and Parks and Rec have been meeting with different folks and Philip Rayburn with Parks and Rec have been meeting with different folks about the feasibility of pickleball courts in Maumel. We've looked at numerous different locations to see, is this something that can fit on current city property? If so, what does that look like? Does it look like throwing a court behind a building somewhere and calling it a day? Or are we looking at something that you can actually have multiple courts and actually perhaps hold tournaments and stuff that draw folks into the community and then into our local businesses? The place that we think would work best is at the community center, and that's the south side of the community center, in between the community center and the charter school, as well as it could wrap around the back side, the east side of the community center. I had hoped to have a sketch for you today. I thought I was going to have one, but when I talked to the engineers at about 4 today, I don't have one. So the general idea is that we can come up with various different options if that's something that the council wants to do, and perhaps even a phased approach of how you can start with fewer courts and really kind of get those used before expanding it, but designing it such that the subsequent courts, if any, are not an afterthought, but are rather just a phased approach in that process. Hope to have something for y'all soon on that, and I'm very interested in feedback on both of those issues. Last thing I wanted to mention, y'all should have seen some boxes, some Comcast boxes as you were coming in. Y'all may recall that we put a hold on Comcast's new permits, not permits that had already been issued, new permits for Comcast's fiber installation, pending approval of some of the boxes that they were using. You may recall we received quite a number of complaints about a variety of issues. One of the issues was the particular color of the boxes. So we're holding the permits for that. Comcast has presented an alternate color that is more taupe or tan as opposed to green. We're holding off. I wanted to bring that to y'all to get y'all's feedback on those boxes to see if there was a preference between the two. What Comcast has said is, in an unprecedented move, whatever the council decides will be the color of the box, not only here in Maumel, but in Arkansas as a whole. So, because we have completely put a stop to it. So, no pressure, but there's people who have never met you, heard of you, and maybe even some that don't know where Maumel is, that are going to have a certain colored box in their yard based on y'all's preferences. So, certainly by the end of the meeting, I'd like to hear thoughts on that and what advice or what to say to Comcast in that regard. Could you get your mic on there?
There's that ugly green one, and then you've got.
Could you get your mic down there? Yeah. So, pardon me. What were you saying?
Are those our only two options? Because you know, you'll have a big tan one out there when everything turns green, and then you'll have this ugly green one, and when fall comes. So, you know, do we have another color to choose from?
Those were the two options that they submitted. Obviously, none of them jumped off the carpet at me as being a great idea or choice. I have asked multiple times, they have numerous boxes throughout the city, and I've asked why they can't use that color, if not that style box. And those are the two submissions that they've given.
I don't like the green one.
I don't like the green ones or the tan ones. So, that said, we have had both of those boxes, just as empty shells on the front of the City Hall for maybe a month now, just to see if anyone would exit. So that's a good sign. They've both been just sitting up front right by the sign along the side of the road. If you drove by, you probably thought they were installed there. Y'all have seen them at least one council meeting, and they've been out there for a while. So we can talk about that later. If there's any questions about what I've said, holler. If not, great. Outstanding. We will move on to Planning Commission report. Councilmember Tierney? Oh, wait, Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I missed the cutoff there. Can I ask questions about what you were saying?
Certainly, yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, I'm with Ms. Williams. I'd prefer dark green. I'm sure that's what she was thinking. As far as the paving and the overlays and all that stuff, Riverland, I think was supposed to have been paved maybe last year, overlaid last year or this year, and it hadn't, and I'm assuming that's because you've flipped them, is that correct?
Riverland is slated for a cape seal. So a sealant, not a full overlay. So
Okay.
what that sealant does is it'll look like a sharp, it'll look like a new asphalt if
Yeah.
you don't really know what you're looking for. But it's a full sealant that goes down. It'll look shiny black. It's designed to waterproof the roads, seal the cracks. As y'all know and have heard in the past, a lot of the damage that occurs to roads is due to moisture getting in and out. So Riverland was slated to be overlaid this year. Of course, it is now September, and I see Mike Hogan running in from the shadows. It was slated to be striped last year, and then it came up in the pavement preservation program that it's striped to add the bike lanes along there, y'all may recall. In that process, we realized it was at the top of the list for cape sealing, so we didn't want to stripe it, cape seal it, and then stripe it again, back to back. But it is one of the reasons that we pushed the cape sealing forward in that.
Okay, so that may occur before the end of the year or early next year or something like that? Do we know?
Mike Hogan?
I didn't mean to make this a big deal, I'm sorry.
Is the goal still to get those done this year? Or is
Yes, I
it,
talked to Intermountain Slurry today. They're supposed to be moving in material tomorrow, so hopefully within the next 2 weeks, you'll probably see some work
okay.
being done.
Great, thank you.
so we'll also be publishing some info, I believe, on cape sealing process. It's a little bit different than overlaying in that there's multiple different steps, and so we want to make sure that the residents are aware that there's a second step. It's one of those things where if you see the first step, you might think, well, what the heck is this? Don't worry, they come back a week or two later and do the second step and finish it. So I believe Sydney and Mike and I are working with the contractor who also is wanting to get that information out as best we can to as many people so they understand how that's going to go.
Okay, great, thank you. I also just wanted to thank, I think it's great that we're focusing on paths and things like that here in Maumel. It almost fell by the wayside back there around 2003, 2004. The city had pretty much decided to just let them go, along with the pocket parks and things, and they went ahead and ended up paving some of the repaving some of the trails, and we're keeping up with it now, and I think that's great. Also, some of the pocket parks I noticed have been repainted and that sort of thing, so I'm glad that's the case too. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, the issue with the trails is the way the trails are built, and you look at the amount of money that we have to improve them each year, it is impossible to get the trails to improve with the amount of money we have with the way the trails are built. A lot of those are just asphalt laid on top of ground, and so without fully engineered trails, they just degrade at a very high rate and have a very high improvement cost. Conversely, you don't want to necessarily engineer and build a base for every trail, because that has the problem of going into the ground and therefore damaging some of the roots of trees, and you could end up with damaged and dying trees alongside those trails. So it's a balance, but hopefully this process helps identify different ways that we can improve that over the long run.
Thank you, I'm done.
Councilmember Tierney with the Planning Commission report.
There were 6 different properties that had a number of items before the Planning Commission in August. An Osage Hill replat at 4 Eagle Cove was previously made from 4 lots to 2 and was changed again back from 2 to 3. It was approved unanimously. 4 residents spoke about their concerns over crowding as a result of the new Stone Canyon addition in North Maumel on the west side of Old Maumel Road. This is an 86-acre section with 26 acres dedicated to open space and includes recently annexed and undeveloped land. Both the land use amendment and the zoning change from R1 to PRD were approved by votes of 6 to 1. The proposed preliminary development plan and the proposed preliminary plat were both tabled until next month to allow for more time for research. A proposed preliminary plat site plan, landscape plan for the business part addition at 400 Sharkey Drive and Burkhalter Drive was approved, all three phases were approved unanimously. The Harris Pfeiffer property and the, and I'm just guessing here how to say this name, Triavicta Lodi property, located at Commercial Park Drive and Murphy Drive, is currently being considered by the council for rezoning. The commission unanimously approved their preliminary plat and the grading permit, the first permit issued under the new ordinance, and they were unanimously approved, both contingent on the council's zoning approval. The Newton Creek commercial property is 236 acres east of the new third entrance and is part of a long-term plan to connect White Oaks to Highway 365 at Trap Road until Hudman Road can be upgraded to provide access. Eventually, the city council will need to consider an amendment to the master plan to make this happen. That's not coming before the council just yet. The planning commission unanimously approved the preliminary plat. Eventually, this property will be proposed for annexation, which will come before the council. An amendment to the city code to require commercial districts to require a site plan review passed unanimously and is coming to the council for consideration. A related amendment for a land use amendment tied to rezoning was tabled to enable changes to be made to refine the language. And that was everything.
Thank you, sir, for the detailed report. The next item of business is the procedural motion. At this time, I entertain a motion to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only.
So moved. Second.
I've got motions and seconds. Any discussion on those motions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. We'll move on to unfinished business. The first item is Resolution 2022-40, approving a preliminary development plan. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumel, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2022-40, approving the preliminary development plan for the property titled Phase 1 and 2, Cypress Bend at Maumel Crossing.
All right, thank you. This was tabled previously at the request of the applicant. On your desk when you arrived, you should have seen a copy of Exhibit A, which is the appropriate preliminary development plan document for y'all. Mr. Grummer is not able to make it today for health issues. And so, in fact, he sent me a picture of he told me a medical situation, and I called him a slacker and told him he was going to be fired if he didn't start taking his job serious. For anyone that knows Scott and me would know that that's very much a joke, because he was trying to work, and I was like, please stop working, take care of what you need to take care of. But anyways, we do have a applicant's representative here, and I'll go ahead and open the floor. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I've got several questions here for the applicant and for the mayor or whoever might know, since Mr. Grummer's not here.
If you could please state your name and address for the record, sir.
Roy Andrews, 3 Monarch Drive. Good evening.
Okay. Now, as I understand this was the owner of this had originally developed it, and a similar, if not identical, preliminary plat. Is that correct?
Yes, that first phase was identical to what it is now. We haven't really changed any of that.
Okay, so you haven't changed that. Now, the difference is this will be public now as opposed to private.
They do want to go with, at one point they were talking about making the roads private, but yes, everything will be public at this point.
Okay,
Public
how will that
streets.
affect the bill of assurance and the POA and that sort of thing? I think under the original thing, there was gonna be a very strict POA
They'll
as
still
far.
have to have a POA to maintain the, park within that, I believe that's correct. And then, so none of that really changes. This just makes it, and the city inspected it. Public Works did all the inspections, before it was, accepted by the city while it was being built. So that doesn't really change any of that either.
Still
So-
gonna be a clubhouse?
No, there's not a clubhouse.
Okay, there
There's just a
was,
park in the middle is the only difference.
okay,
just
there
like we
was
have
gonna be a
around the city.
clubhouse before, I think, wasn't there, or something?
No, not on this
No?
one.
Okay, I was thinking of something else. What about alleyways? It looks like there's gonna be alleyways behind the houses or something. Is that what I'm looking at?
It's built to street standards. It's not really an alleyway. They're just rear entry on a couple of those houses. But that was all approved in phase one. We're just
Uh-huh.
bringing it back through. We didn't get phase two approved, and they're ready to go to phase two, to start constructing phase two. So, Scott wanted us to bring that back through, and we're doing that.
Okay, and those will all be public thoroughfares and
Yes,
maintained by the city
yes.
and its standards and all that? Okay, what about, spacing between the houses? It looks like pretty small lots.
These are small lots. It was originally designed to be that way.
Okay, how much space do you suppose there'll be between houses?
It'll meet the standard setback requirements of, I don't recall specifically on that, but it was what's allowed by code.
Okay, would it be like 3 feet, 6
Oh,
feet?
no, it's more than that. It's 10.
10
Madam
feet?
City Attorney?
I just, when you say, as far as setbacks, what's allowed by code, this is PRD, right?
Right. And
So
it's what, and I don't have the plan, I apologize, I don't have the plan in front of me, it would be on that plan, but it was, we have 10 feet is what's between the houses.
So in PRD, your setbacks don't have to conform to the same standards that they would in an R1 district, even though this is similar to an R1 district. However, those standards that are in R1 should be used, our code says, as a guide, right? So, sometimes there is some differentiation from that, but basically, we should still be kind of keeping those as a guide in mind.
Okay, now setback refers to the distance between the street and the house, is that correct?
You can have front or rear setbacks.
Okay, so it's that's different from space between the house, okay. All right, what about phone calls from residents? Usually Mr. Grummer's armed with that information, do we have any idea? It seemed like there was a lot of people that didn't want it, but I can't remember what the count was.
I don't have that information. All I have from Mr. Grummer on this was his memo that was included in the council packet.
Okay, because I know there was concerns that these houses would be inconsistent with the area across the street there, which was the, what do you call it, natural trails, which is a high-end subdivision, as you would know. And anyway, okay, public powers. Okay, I'm probably going to stand with the residents out there because I was thinking they were opposed because it's different than the character of the neighboring property across the street by quite a bit. From what I understand, it will be. So I'm going to be a no vote on this one.
Mr. Grummer did meet with the applicant on this to discuss the housing and what could be enforced and what couldn't be as far as the aesthetic of the house and everything, and that was resolved through city planning.
Okay, but these are lower. These are more like entry-level houses, whereas before they were more high-end. Is that correct?
Still the same. I mean, it's a more affordable house, but
Okay.
it's still a good house.
Okay. All right, that's all I've got.
And so there was a requirement that due to the proximity of the neighborhood across the street, there's a certain zone that those houses have a little higher quality, facade on them. And they've agreed to meet that until they get out of that, buffer zone.
Okay. With the way it was private, I think I voted for it back then, but I don't feel comfortable right now, so I will be a no vote on this.
Yeah,
Thank you.
This was previously approved, and now they're looking at, bringing in the phase 2 and developing that second phase. But because we didn't have phase 2 approved, we had to bring it back through. And there was a question about the quality of the house, but that's been resolved through planning and codes.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
Councilmember Gardner?
Motion to approve resolution 2022-40.
I've got a motion to approve resolution 2022-40. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no.
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 Roll call, please.
Madam City Clerk?
Councilmember Mosley,
No.
Councilmember Mazzoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Shin,
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
No. Thank you. Resolution 2022-40 has passed. The next item of business is the second reading of ordinance 1071, amending the Maumel land use plan. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumel, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1071, an ordinance amending the Maumel land use plan and map and for other purposes.
All right, this is on second reading. If there, Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I'll ask again if we have any idea what the developer ultimately has in mind for that land that would be in C2. Any new news to report on that? At last time, I think they said they didn't know yet.
No.
Still don't know. Okay. Now, one thing I picked up, I think, in the planning meeting is if this rezoning happens, there's going to be some, you'll all be using the grading ordinance to take down some of the hillside and that sort of thing. Is that correct?
Yes, we would be, Roy Andrews, 3 Monarch Drive, we would be using the grading ordinance that was recently passed to be able to take really kind of that knoll down. The front part was graded under a previous application, and so that we could move dirt across the road and not have to haul it. And then the back side of that property was previously excavated years ago for the high school, and this would be to clean it up.
All right. Now, is the developer aware that, I think he's got, what, six months to
Yes.
to file some type of plan, or he has to replant all the trees and that sort of thing?
We'd be aware that we'd be replanting the trees.
Okay. All right, that's all I've got. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. If there's no further discussion, this will be on third reading at the next city council meeting. Next item of business is the second reading ordinance 1072, amending the Maumel zoning map. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumel, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1072, an ordinance amending the Maumel zoning map and for other purposes.
All right, this is the zoning amendment proposal that goes with the land use plan of the previous ordinance.
I have one question on that. Did we ever, and I apologize if we discussed this and I have forgotten, but the buffers that are required in industrial, I don't think on the site plan that had been provided, there was the buffer on the parcel that's gonna remain industrial. How is the buffer gonna be handled?
We were gonna handle the buffer on the commercial side.
On the commercial side?
Yeah.
Is there anything that's gonna be documenting that? Because
When we
have
come
some
back through with the site plan, we would have to handle it at that time.
Okay. Well, but that'll be after this would have already
Yes.
been considered. Okay.
Ordinance would still require that we had the buffer, once we went through.
Yeah, I think the code section requires the buffer be on the industrial.
It does,
side.
it does, but we'd like to put it, for landscaping reasons, put it more, on the commercial side.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, the land that's going to stay industrial that butts up to Murphy Drive, is there something already built on there?
No, it's vacant.
It's a vacant land. Would, by subdividing that and moving that lot to the other side, is that going to make that lot on Murphy Drive
No.
undevelopable?
We actually had submitted an exhibit with that showed a development being on there to give an idea what a several thousand square foot warehouse kind of flex space would look like.
Okay.
30,000 square foot. So it fits well with what's in that area. If you actually look at Google Earth or an aerial of most of those lots, you'll realize they've only used the front half. The back half is wooded or used for gravel parking or something like that. Most of them haven't used the back half.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. If there's no further discussion, this will be on third reading at the next city council meeting. All right, we'll move on to new business. First item of new business is Resolution 2022-41, authorizing the purchase of property. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumel, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2022-41, a resolution authorizing the purchase of property to facilitate construction of the White Oak Crossing Roundabout, namely Track 2 southeast of a quarter, Section 34-T3N, in Pulaski County, Arkansas, and for other purposes.
All right, so this is for the White Oak Crossing Roundabout. This subject property is the primary property that the roundabout would be on. This isn't asking for more money. We have that money as part of the project that's already going through. So it's an 80% grant that we have, with North Little Rock paying, I want to say 25% of the 20%, which would be 5% of the total project. But anyway, so this is just required to go ahead and close on that property. Councilmember Mosley?
Yes, sir. Is that land a commercial, is it currently zoned commercial, or, I mean, I'm trying to figure out what would make that's a pretty high price on that land. Was it even developable?
So the price that we offered is we're using the engineering firm that we're using, Half Engineering. They have a property acquisition department, and we're using them to handle all the negotiations. This is the exact appraised value done by our appraisal team. I don't recall offhand what the zoning of that was, but I would be willing to bet that they would say that is very marketable land, being that the land next to it has just sold. And if you could state your name.
Troy Andrews, 3 Monarch Drive. That should be zoned PRD.
It's zoned PRD?
Yes.
Okay. Something commercial could be built on that?
Yes, it could.
Okay.
It would be like most of the Country Club of Arkansas properties.
Okay. So that would have had a good value.
Yes.
As far as like the gas station next door and that sort of thing?
Yes, that's correct. And its proximity to Country Club of Arkansas and White Oak Crossing.
All right. Did you want to add something, Mr. Holloway? No? Okay. All right. Do we know who owned that land?
I don't know the name of the company, but it's Tommy Wright's.
Tommy Wright's company?
It's Country Club Development.
Country Club Development, LLC.
Okay.
And that is a consistent value with what we've seen other commercial lands that are still PRD in that area and so forth. But I've seen this documented. About
Okay.
650 a foot, which is about what we've seen.
All right, that's all I got, thank you.
Councilmember Tierney?
Yes, if we do go ahead and approve this, how long would it be after this that we would probably get started?
So we're hoping that as soon as we close on this, utility relocations can begin, and we think that most, if not all of the utility relocation is on this property. This is the property where the bulk of the roundabout will be. There's two other parcels that are on the outskirts, and we're looking at a much smaller sliver of land. As soon as we get the rights of way, we can get approval from the state to bid it out. I would like to say that could happen very quickly, but yeah, our goal is to have it bid and maybe even under construction before year's end. But that's going to be heavily contingent on the two other parcels. We may be seeing an eminent domain action on those two other parcels. And by we seeing it, that would come to the council for that, because we're not making as much progress with those other two parcels as here. So that could delay it a little bit as well.
All right, so just to confirm, you said about 4 years out if everything falls into place.
4 years?
I thought that's what you said.
No, I'm sorry. If everything goes smoothly, before the end of the year. Before the end of the year, okay. Yeah, a little bit different, before the end of the year.
That's why I wanted to confirm that.
But I will say that nothing has gone smoothly with this entire process.
Okay.
So, you know, it's very nice when the state and federal dollars come in and pay for 80% of a project, but it is a killer to any timeline that you possibly want. So you get more done, but it takes a lot longer to get them done. Councilmember Mazzoni?
Yeah, so I just wanted to confirm of that almost 350, so 80% of that will be the grant, and then only 20% will come after that when we split with North Little Rock.
Correct, and really the way it works is we pay it all.
And then they
once the
bring it
check
back.
clears, they reimburse it. North Little Rock has already paid their 25% to the city. Their 25% of the original grant amount. You will recall that we applied for more, so they still owe their portion of that increased grant amount. Councilmember Williams?
Motion to adopt resolution 2022-41.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. There is still some discussion. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, as far as eminent domain, how do you determine what you pay under eminent domain?
Madam City Attorney?
So there are certain requirements that you have to use as far as once you have it appraised, making offers and the negotiation process that's required. But after that, that could go to the courts for them to make a determination on what the appropriate price is.
Okay. Would we do better on this parcel that we're doing here by eminent domain, or is it about the same, you think?
I would argue probably worse, because this was our appraised value.
Okay.
And so there was no negotiations up or deals. Or the appraised value is what we offered. I assume if we were to offer the appraised value at court, they'd come back and argue that they want more money.
Okay.
Which is what we're seeing maybe with the other.
They would argue with your appraisal. They would argue with the comparable properties that you were using and that kind of thing. So that would be, we had a little bit of this process and did file some eminent domain actions in the Crystal Hill project. We were able to finally reach negotiations that never actually went to court, but that's going to be the argument. I mean, they have the right to come back and say, okay, your appraisal used this property. I think it's not comparable for this reason. So it's a process of determining what the most comparable numbers are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussion on the motion to adopt resolution 2022-41? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Next item of business is the first reading of Ordinance 1073, amending the Maumel Land Use Plan. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1073, an ordinance amending the Maumelle Land Use Plan and map and for other purposes.
Thank you. This is the ordinance that Councilmember Tierney spoke about in his report. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, this is an interesting neighborhood here. There's going to be, the reason they're wanting to change the land use and the zoning is to do some high-density housing, and there are some townhomes and some things like that. I met with Mr. Grummer one day and visited with him about this one and another one for about an hour, and one of his arguments for doing the high density was that if they couldn't do the high density, they might just not do the recreational area and just build houses in there and that sort of thing and still have the same amount of traffic. But this will add a lot of traffic to Highway 365. Could be thousands of trips a day that would be going through that stoplight there at Maumel Boulevard and 365. I asked if a traffic study had been done. I think Mr. Grummer said that the RDOT had even asked, has now asked the city of Maumelle to do a traffic study of that corridor. The mayor may not realize that's the case, but I think he said that was. And anyway, so a traffic study has not yet been done. I don't know what the effect is going to be on Maumelle people that are trying to get out of town in the morning. With people trying to get out of there. If we start building, if a lot of people start annexing along there and we get a lot of housing, new housing, that corridor is going to fill up and we're going to have congestion there for people trying to get out of town to the north. So in my opinion, we should keep that housing, whatever it is, going to be as low density as possible with the lots as big as possible. Just to minimize the effect on the traffic and people trying to get out of Maumelle. And I think that would be more in the character of the surrounding neighborhood because that's kind of what you have there along 365 or big open spaces, small houses on big lots and things like that. I think that would be in the best benefit of the surrounding areas to just keep that R1 and not go to this high density. The development that they've proposed that's hung up right now with the Planning Commission is a strange one in that they're actually including some land that has not been annexed yet into Maumelle. So one of the planning commissioners just called this a big mess and voted no on both of these. And I'm probably, mainly because of the character of their neighborhood and the fact that we haven't had a traffic study and the need to keep that low density, I think I will definitely be a no vote on this, and I would urge you all to do the same, to look out for your constituents that are trying to get out of town. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Just in response to I haven't heard anything about RDOT wanting a traffic study. I know that Mr. Grummer wants some traffic feasibility studies up there, as I believe that he thinks some roundabouts in that vicinity would be key to the development of some of the commercial properties a little bit north. So I know Mr. Grummer has been pushing for one. I haven't heard anything about RDOT wanting one, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's convinced them to want one. Okay. Madam City Attorney?
I just wanted to go over the guidelines that the council is to use when reviewing an amendment to the land use plan, which is found in 54-79. This is from paragraph number 7. The Planning Commission and the City Council will review the proposal and base their decision using the following guidelines. A, other changes that have occurred in the neighborhood since the land use plan was adopted or the latest amendment was enacted. B, whether these changes resulted in a change to the neighborhood's character sufficiently to justify the proposed land use plan change. C, issues and concerns raised by the neighborhood when submitted with sufficient specificity to enable the commission or city council to respond to the issues. And D, other substantial or technical evidence that any proponent or opponent of the proposed change submits.
Thank you. Councilmember Gardner?
Thank you, Mayor. So this is currently zoned R1, correct? That's when they asked for annexation. It's my understanding they consulted with the city. They didn't really know what they wanted to come in as, and it was suggested R1?
Yes,
Is
sir.
that an accurate portrayal? Okay. One of the interesting tidbits in the Planning Commission packet, which kudos to Mr. Grummer if he's watching from home, and Jason and all of them, they've done a great job explaining these projects as they're coming through in great detail. One of the things that jumped out to me was that with it being zoned R1, I believe by right, I think it was in the Planning Commission, they could build 510, is that the number? They could build approximately 510 homes as is, as they've already been given the right to. So if we want to protect the area and not increase traffic, going to this R2, because I think the proposal's for 4, Mr. Andrews?
If you could please state your name and
400.
address for the record.
Roy Andrews, 3 Monarch Drive.
We should have that memorized by now.
We're going to PRD.
Right, okay.
Which we are by R1, they could have 6 units per acre, which would give around 507 to 510 homes. We're proposing only about 406 homes on that. And so, yes, by right, we could have a higher.
Higher density
Yes.
with the existing zoning.
That's correct.
Okay, and then y'all are proposing how much green space for this
So
project?
of the 86 overall acres, we're proposing roughly 26 acres being open space or green space. There is an old rock quarry in the middle of that is about 11 acres that we would propose be a bike park. We have met with a consultant to come in and talk about designing the trails. We have met with a consultant to look at traffic studies, and the traffic impact would be less than what would be required for a collector. So 365 can more than handle the traffic that would be coming out of this subdivision.
Okay. For R1 as it is now, what are we required to leave behind as green space? Is there a certain percentage that y'all are looking for?
10%.
10%, and you're proposing 26%?
26 acres.
26 acres.
At the
Oh,
86,
okay.
so yeah.
Okay.
A lot
quite
higher
bit more.
percentage.
Okay, okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councilmember Mazzoni?
Yeah, going back, since we've already annexed a few and starting to develop more, do we routinely on these coordinate with police and fire and see that our existing structure can take on the existing, because if we annex more, that's more land to cover, or will we have to bring on more patrolmen, more fire at a later date based on approving this plan?
If the question, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Can we accept this in and adequately patrol it without any more police or fire personnel?
No, well, no, I haven't consulted with the police department to do an assessment. Chief Pickard, are you out there?
If he's not.
I know the fire department consults with the fire marshal's office for the safety concerns. Chief?
Put you on the spot, Chief.
Could you please state your name?
Chief Corey with the Maumel Police Department. To answer your question, we constantly evaluate the population served with the number of officers that we have, and that is something that was going to become in budget, an increase to the agency. But not just for this area, but for the city as a whole, looking at catching up with the number of officers per 1,000 served. And that's typically the way that police departments judge their staffing, as well as call volume and a plethora of other things.
And it looks like Chief Buford came in on deck here. Chief?
Bo Buford, 2000 Murphy Drive. Yes, I'm glad that point was brought up. The more we do expand, that is something looking at. And just as Chief Pickard mentioned as well, we are also looking at potentially to increase to be able to cover more area, because it also affects insurance ratings and how much insurance you pay for your homes and things like that as well for the fire department side of it. So yes, we are looking at that, and we'll be bringing things to the council for the next year or so. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Mosley, Madam City Attorney, sorry.
I was just gonna ask, if it remained R1, y'all mentioned the quarry being a large portion of this open space that's there. Would that quarry be built into lots, or is that pretty much gonna have to stay a quarry, or at least some sort of open space?
It could be graded down and built into lots. And the reason we're looking at the PRD is to be able to change, like you mentioned before, with PRD, we use R1 as a guideline, but we are allowed to adjust those setbacks or go to, in this case, townhomes. And so it allows us, and even by R1, you can do some duplexes and other things, but looking at triple and quadplexes allows us to squeeze a little bit more on and have more open space. But yes, if we had to go R1, you could level that down and build houses on it. We just, and be welcome to take anybody out that wants to go see it. It's really, until we went and saw what it looked like, it's really unique, and to realize it's just across the tracks. And I mean, just the pine trees, the way it's grown up, it will be it's something really nice to have as part of Maumel, and it will be public area. It's not just for that community, it's for all of Maumel. Or anybody outside. Excuse me?
Will the open space, will it be dedicated to the public?
We're still working with planning on that. Not sure that they would have the money to take care of it. So if that's the case, if the city doesn't want to pick up that, we're looking at what we could do as an improvement district to maintain that, the trails and the park area. But yes, it would be public use.
Another answer to the question on open space on R1 that was asked earlier, it looks like it's variable 7 to 15%, and there are a number of factors that get factored in to determine what that is. I'm sure a lot of things like drainage and natural geographic features get figured into that.
Thank you. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I wanted to reply to Councilmember Gardner's ideas there. One thing we've got to remember is we don't have a preliminary plat in front of us. And if you remember what happened over at the country club, we had somebody bring something in front of us that would be low density, just 2 or 3, 4 houses or something like that there over at the country club, Maumel Country Club. These folks are free to change their mind at some point. Once they get the zoning, they could sell it to somebody else. Somebody wants to put in even higher density housing and that sort of thing. The preliminary plat and all that is still hung up in the Planning Commission. There's a lot of questions. Like I said, some of it hadn't even been annexed into Maumel yet. I think we're getting the cart way ahead of the horse here to change the zoning. I think what we ought to do, either tonight or somewhere next meeting or the next, just table it until we see a preliminary plat and see what they've really got in mind. Because right now, all we're seeing is wanting to change the zoning and all that and make it high, where they could, PRD, they could put in apartments. They could do anything they want. So I think we ought, I don't see the rush. I don't see the rush to get this zoned unless somebody's just trying to make a deal somewhere. And I don't think that's what we're here to do, is help somebody make a deal. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, this will be on second reading at the next city council meeting.
May I make a comment?
Certainly.
Thank you. Just to help a benefit with the PRD, if it's a straight plat that went through and it was zoned R1, that wouldn't necessarily come before you. But as a PRD, city council has the right to approve that or disapprove it, turn it down. So actually a PRD or a PCD zoning is actually better in your favor, because you have a chance to say no. So it gives you a little more flexibility, and yeah, we're just trying to bring that development through and let y'all see it, and the city planning, Scott and his team have asked for more time to see that, but it is all part of the process.
Good point, but I'd still think we ought to wait until all that gets hashed out at the planning commission. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. If there's no further discussion, this will be on second reading at the next city council meeting. All right, next order of business is the first reading of Ordinance 1074, amending the Maumel zoning map. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumel, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1074, an ordinance amending the Maumel zoning map and for other purposes.
This is the zoning map for the area that we just discussed as part of Ordinance 1073.
This is just first reading, right?
Yes. Madam City Attorney?
Just to go over some of the guidelines and the purposes section of the zoning chapter, section 94-2 discusses the purpose of zoning, and the purpose of the regulations set forth in this chapter is to, 1, promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of the city. 2, provide efficient and economical means for civic development. 3, secure safety from fire and panic. 4, control overcrowding of land. 5, provide adequate light and ventilation. 6, avoid concentration of population. And 7, facilitate ease of provision of transportation, parks, utilities, schools, and other public requirements. So as we consider zoning amendments, these are always good factors to keep in mind and to analyze and discuss.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, this will be on second reading at the next city council meeting. Next order of business is the first reading of Ordinance 1075, amendment to the city code. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumel, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1075, an ordinance amending Section 94-101 of the Maumel City Code to require site plan review for building permits in commercial zoning districts and for other purposes.
Thank you. The title of this ordinance is about all I have to comment on that. Councilmember Mosley?
I'm assuming this expands on what the current situation is. We were only doing this for commercial before, and we're going to expand it to take in all those other applicable districts. Is that correct?
The opposite. So it's currently site plans were for OS, R1, R2, R3, I1, but not C1, C2, C3, and C4. Madam City Attorney?
Oh, okay.
Not all R1 and R2. It's just cluster housing and zero lot line development. We don't do this in all R1 and R2, but it is to add the commercial districts that are not already in like a planned unit planned development, planned district.
Okay, so this does, it takes what we've currently got and expands it to the commercial structures, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I can live with that.
Is there any additional discussion on Ordinance 1075?
Meant to ask one question. Any downsides to doing this? This gives the planning commission more opportunity to review things as far as, and I see that as a good thing. I don't see any, is there a downside to this at all?
The downside might be if you were C1, C2, C3, or C4 property owner, that you'd have that additional step. This is something that the planning department thought would be beneficial for the city to review.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move on to Resolution 2022-42, amending the street fund budget. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumel, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, A resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2022-42, a resolution to amend the 2022 street fund budget.
Thank you. So this is what I mentioned during the department report. This is when we originally designed Crystal Hill Road, there was no regional greenway discussion, let alone a regional greenway proposed to come down Crystal Hill. So in the area from basically the park on the river up to Maumel Boulevard is currently designed to be an 8-foot off-street side path. If we want to go ahead and widen that, now would probably be the most efficient time to do that. To go from 8 feet to 12 feet would cost less than $12,000. Councilmember Gardner?
That's my only question. How is this only $12,000?
Well, because
That's great. I'm not complaining, just wondering.
It would be more than that if you were having to redo the base, but as you're kind of building it all at the beginning, you have the economy of scale, and so it's much more affordable to do it now.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-42.
Got a motion and a second. There is discussion. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, this is just for the distance between Park on the River and First Security?
Yes.
Okay, and the other portion that runs along the river is already going to be 12 feet?
No, it goes into the street for a bike lane.
Okay.
So you have a bike lane on both sides, up and down the part that is between Park on the River and Counts Massey.
Okay, so the bike lane's on both sides down
Yes.
there. Cool.
And then a crossing on the east side to bring them over toward the, right at the Park on the River.
All right, thank you.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
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 All opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, with that, we will move on to Resolution 2022-43, entering a cooperative purchasing contract. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumel, Pulaski County, Arkansas, Resolution Number 2022-43, authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract on behalf of the City of Maumel with National Intergovernmental Purchasing Alliance Company, DBA Omnia Partners, as well as the intergovernmental agreement with the lead public agency directing the City of Maumel to prepare such documents as necessary and to take such steps as necessary to enter into a cooperative purchasing contract and for other purposes.
All right, thank you very much. So whenever we use a cooperative purchasing program or contract, that has to come here before the City Council. Specifically, what we're looking at using this for immediately is UKG. They're the ones that will be handling the payroll. When we were going through TAPS, which is another cooperative purchasing entity that we use pretty regularly, we were running into some difficulties with the cost. Liz did a substantial amount of research and actually found that by using this intergovernmental agreement, she thinks will save anywhere from $7,276 to $10,766 by switching from one cooperative purchasing entity to the other. And that number varies because a portion of the amount we're billed is based on the number of employees. So as it's seasonal and goes up and down, we're paying per employee. Councilmember Tierney?
Yes, when you say it's gonna save us $7,000 to $10,000, is that a year?
Well, a portion of that is the one-time setup fee, so we think we save approximately $1,000 of that is the one-time setup fee. The remaining $7,000 to what would be $9,700 and something dollars is expected to be an annual savings.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Mosley?
Can you give some examples of what we would be using this for?
Well, yes, so this has everything from the time, accruals, leave, HR, benefits, payroll. We're we're moving to them for recruiting, the integration hub, payroll services. It was one of the things that the finance department came back not too long ago when we were talking about the OpenGov system, which is who we've just migrated to for our financial software. They offered at that time a payroll service and HR suite of essentially. However, as we were onboarding with them and going through that process, they determined that their HR suite, the payroll suite, the stuff that integrates with the finance software was not to where they wanted to recommend it to clients for use at that time. And so they stopped that. And then that's when we had to come back and ask the council for additional monies because they weren't handling the payroll anymore. So this, we're not asking for more money at this time. The council's already approved that. We're just looking at adding a cooperative purchasing agreement that can be used for numerous things. The specific reason we're looking at it at this time is because of UKG.
Okay, could we use it for purchasing lawnmowers, fire trucks, things like that?
Other things, I'm not sure if they do that. We have a number of different agreements like this that we use for different things where we'll leverage off the state bid, which we can use, or you just put it out to bid. So usually we try and shop it around. A lot of the vendors have their preferred, cooperative entities, cooperative purchasing entities that they work with, and there's a lot of paperwork that goes with that. So a lot of them don't do a whole lot. UKG in this case also was with Tip Staps, but we found that we can use a different cooperative purchasing agreement and go that route.
Thank you, sir.
Motion to approve resolution 2022-43.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you very much. That concludes unfinished and new business for the day. We'll move on to mayor's comments. Before, I'm going to put a pause here and open the floor for discussion on those Comcast boxes that were out front. In an ideal world, y'all would have looked at one of those two and would have just, the clouds would have parted, the sun shone down on that particular box. Absent that, I am very interested in hearing feedback so that I can let Comcast know. Councilmember Holt?
My thought was on a different subject, Mr. Mayor. I'll hold.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Tierney?
Yeah, neither one of those colors were very nice. One of the things I was asking the gentleman out there is like, why not give people a choice, either or? You might have somewhere where the brown would go better, another house, the green would go better. So we have to pick one of those two. It's not either, it's an either or, not a both.
Well, we can't pick a different one for each yard.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get at.
However,
It'd be nice to give people a choice.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of either of them.
I think the whiter one is the lesser of two.
I've just hit roll call on this, so don't hit your buttons, just talk at this point. So
Having had the green ones in my yard since this all started, they are holding up well to the weather. They're not showing dirt. I look at that beige one and I'm sitting here thinking, what's that gonna look like 2 years from now? So, not that I like the green one, but I've been impressed that it still looks like it did the first day it popped up in my yard.
And that's good?
No.
Okay.
Well, like I say, I'm afraid the beige one will show dirt and look trashy 2 or 3 years from now, and the green one's just gonna fade.
Most of the city's green anyway, right?
It's dark green though. Why can they not do dark green anymore like all the other facilities?
Yeah. I presented that to them and they said, these are the selections that we have. They said that it has to do with the makeup of the box and the material that is being used because they cram it full in this is what they're saying they cram it full with technology that needs to be able to cool. It's one of the reasons they're saying that they're using a more reflective sheen is because it's supposed to reflect the heat away from inside of those boxes. I don't know that I understand why they can't use a different dye, other than they're purchasing a large amount from somebody who probably had 3 or 4 different colors to choose from.
Nice if we could, if they'd allow us to spray paint them dark green.
Who's us?
Those anonymous residents of Maumel.
And my understanding is there are some boxes painted already. I don't know that there's anything in the city that prevents that. We have spoke to them, and they have said that they're not going to give permission to anybody to paint the boxes, but they're also not out looking for that. So that's another one of those.
Was there something wrong with the original green? Because this is a new green, right?
It's the same
green.
No,
That's what's in front of my house, on both sides.
I think the green's fine.
Come on, Chad. I just don't commit, man.
I have these boxes in my yard and they don't bother me, so, it is what it is. But mine are green, just for the record. I say the mayor makes the call.
Oh, gosh, that's a lose-lose proposition. I mean, I'm fine doing that.
Are you gonna vote to table this till?
Well, no, so we,
Till after the event?
no, the fact is we're holding them up here, but not just here, in other cities, at this point, because they're not proceeding with the projects because they're waiting on the city council or the city to choose the 2 boxes. If the selection is the only 2, well, they'll say they can't get fiber because we're holding them up. The atmosphere is different in other cities where they're begging, in some places they're begging them to come in and do it. And we've got a different issue because they're for the reasons everyone's aware of. If the choice is those 2 boxes, I think the green is far better and blends in far better than the tan, which will look great in fall and winter, I think, but the rest of the time will stand out. And it's an atypical color that is not typically used, so. What's that? It's a lot of atypical. Yeah, atypical. Thank you, Councilmember Mazzoni, thank you. It's not typically used because it's atypical.
Yeah, I don't particularly like that green, but I do agree that it would probably blend more into a yard than a brown wood.
The lesser of 2 evils.
With the understanding that I think,
For a dark green one.
yeah, everybody would rather have dark green, just so they know, and
For future purchases.
Yeah, no, I don't understand it either.
I could hook you up with one of those that works for companies.
Okay. That concludes mayor's comments. Councilmember comments? Councilmember Holt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the beginning of the meeting, you had a pass out for everybody, and it had to do with the very tense subject that we're all acutely aware of, having to do with the dog issue. So we're all have sides to everything. I'd like to speak and beg your indulgence for just a couple of minutes, not to talk about the pluses and the minus. Somehow or another, first of all, we as a council must find a way to come together, not judge, not become superior, not become complaintive, to come together in some way that we can serve this community the way it should be served. We are public servants. We are not the owners of the community. We owe it to our constituents to do everything that we can to serve them. Everybody has their opinion, but the most important thing that we can do is that we, as the council, come together and be willing to talk with each other and share our thoughts. It's okay. Nobody is we must put aside our prejudices or our angers or our whatever it is that we have. I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, that you establish perhaps a committee seated or chaired by someone of august stature that will handle the overall meeting and bring people together. As we opened our service this evening, and we always do, we pray to the Almighty Jesus Christ, our Lord. If we believe that, then let's practice it. Let's don't come here and pray one thing and do something else. There's nothing wrong with us talking with each other. We may not necessarily have a deep care for each other, but we're all here to do one thing. I would hope that you would choose a committee. It could be 10 people. It may take a month. It may take 6 months. But at least we can work together. We can look at what other cities do. We can look what we can do. We've come a long way. We're just not there yet. It happened. I've seen the pictures of all the stuff. We're all aware of it. There's no need of going into it. It will come out soon enough. I simply implore the council to put down your positions, whether you're plus, you're for, or against. We're all citizens, and we're all part of the United States of America. We pledged our allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Let's pledge our allegiance to each other and to the citizens of this city. And I would put it in your hands, Mr. Mayor, to establish a system whereby we can work together. It is not going to go away. It won't hurt us to talk about it. But let's start and let's ease the division that exists in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on this too. I've had a dog attack. I guess everybody's aware of that. I don't know who knows the details. I've actually seen the petition that the city attorney whipped up to petition the court to euthanize the 2 pit bull mixed dogs that attacked this gentleman and his dog, that left his dog dead and left the gentleman injured. He suffered cuts on his face, his mouth, his neck, his hand. He injured his back falling on the dogs knocked him onto a flower bed rock garden. He injured his back and his head on the rocks. I think he had to have sutures for those, as well as his hands and his face. This is definitely a dog attack that wouldn't have happened had we not lifted the ban. This is a result of us lifting the ban on dogs. We basically put the interests of a few dog enthusiasts ahead of the safety, health, and welfare of our residents, and the council voted 5-3 to lift the ban. We need to be concerned with the safety, health, and welfare. This is a prime example of why we shouldn't have lifted the ban. I'm hoping that the 5 that voted for this and the mayor who wasn't in favor of sending this to a referendum would have second thoughts on this. I am probably at the next council meeting going to introduce an ordinance to go ahead and reinstate the ban and see how that goes through the process, because that was a mistake. And I'd also like to know who on the council actually owns a pit bull dog or a pit bull mix, or their family or their wives or relatives or whatever, because I don't know that you can participate in the discussion because you'd have a conflict of interest. Does anybody own one? Your wife, you have one in the household? No?
I have a Weimaraner with it
Okay,
and a Border Collie.
all right.
Okay.
Ms. Williams, do you own one? No? Is it terrier? Anybody else? But, so everybody can participate in what discussion that comes of that, but I probably introduce.
Sorry.
I'm paying for this microphone. Isn't that what Ronald Reagan said? The gentleman that could have been attacked, or that did get attacked, I had a conversation with him. I've only had one, and I've kind of backed away because I know he's hired a lawyer, and a gentleman that owned the dogs, I think, has hired a lawyer, and so I felt like it was inappropriate to talk to him again unless he reached out to me. But he, I told him that I said, well, I'm glad that at least you were armed and were able to defend yourself. And he said, oh, yeah, he said, we have a lady that walks up and down the street with a baby carriage with two small dogs on a daily basis. He said, I'm just so thankful it was me instead of her. He said they would have torn her to pieces, and it was his opinion that the dogs would have been after him next if he hadn't fired his gun. So if it had been the baby carriage, we would have been in the national news. We would have been the poster child. So I think it's time for us to all come in next meeting and look at an ordinance to go ahead and reinstate the ban, and let's all act like adults, and let's look after the safety, health, and welfare of our citizens, as opposed to just a few folks that you know. And I'm sure pit bulls are really sweet with their families and their babies and all that stuff, but these things happen. These dogs are prone to do that. It's been proven time and again. I've experienced it in my family, and it's time to go ahead and put it back on. Oh, Ms. City Attorney, if you wouldn't mind, please forward that redacted version of your petition to all the council members so they can see the pictures of what happened to that gentleman and his dog.
I'll do that tomorrow.
I appreciate it. Anybody that voted for the ordinance have any comments? Anybody going to vote against imposing the ban?
Councilmember Gardner?
Thank you, sir. Could you have Animal Services by the next couple of weeks give us a list of the dog breeds that have... They have it. Thank you. Yeah, if you could have that in the next couple of weeks, just dog breeds. What year was it? 22? 2020, 2021, and 2022 would be fine. Just the types of breeds. That way, if we're going to look at a ban, I would like to include all of the animals that have possibly attacked people. I just don't. I mean, if we're concerned about safety, I would rather make sure we do it right and get all the dogs that could possibly do that. So, thank you, Mayor.
Based on documents that I have here. So, be sure to include the other breeds also.
So you're asking for a list of all of the dog attacks in the last several years? The breeds of all of the dog attacks?
I believe they have. Yeah. I believe they have maybe some sort of record of breed. I don't know. I know there's so many mixes that it's hard for them to even provide us with that, and that's understandable. I've talked to Mr. Davis about this in previous years, and I understand there's mixes, lots of mixes. But if he has anything by breed, that'd be helpful.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, I think he has information on dog bites. I don't know that every dog attack is created equal, right? So, I mean, there are...
It's broken down. Well, it depends on what you have. This right here is not. The 150 other documents that he sent me, yes. I got the same thing that was for you.
That's broken. It
It's
describes
broken down
the type
by
of...
bites, by just what's roaming loose, poop in the yard. It's broken down into a lot of detail with comments on each report. Now, it's not highly detailed, they have other records that will be more detailed. But you can at least tell what the animal did. So, and I assume I could forward that email that I got from Animal Control.
If it's a FOIA request, you should,
Ms. Robinson had it printed.
Yeah.
I just asked for it in digital form.
Okay, Councilmember Mosley.
Now, what I'll put in the ordinance is exactly what was in it before we changed it.
Well, we've had two people seriously injured. One went to Children's Hospital. The other lady took 4 months to recover from the Akita bite. The German Shepherd that mauled the kid, I don't know for sure. I think I was told it was at McDonald's. That kid had to go to Children's. And,
All right.
And MAS did their job. They did their due diligence, and they put, can't speak for the Akita, but the other dogs got put down.
The Akita did get put down.
Okay, then they all got put down.
They all got put down, that's good. That's good, but I'm still gonna just use those are the ones,
You're being discriminatory. You're not protecting the people.
Well, we can,
Most of the people
Councilmember
are attacked by
Shin,
other dogs.
there will be ample opportunity to discuss this. Or if you want to hit your button, I can call.
I don't believe in discrimination among dogs. I believe in taking the ones that can kill somebody and seriously maim
German
somebody.
Shepherds do that.
And that's what I'm gonna put in the ordinance.
Like I say,
Councilmember Holt?
You see, Mr. Mayor, the argument rages on. Instead of trying to have peace, we're trying to be the winner of the arguments. It isn't gonna get anywhere that way. Lay down your weapons, ladies and gentlemen. Let's come together and talk. There's room to talk. We're not going to get anywhere, and we're not serving the purpose of serving the committee. We're not here to have battle each other. We're here to negotiate. We are supposed to be a negotiating agency. So I would beg you to please stop trying to win the argument. Just be willing to visit with each other, and let's see if there is something that we can do for the benefit of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Mosley?
Let me ask you, Mr. Holt, would this thing that Patty Robinson passed out here, is this something you would favor? Is this something you would consider as a negotiation, a compromise or something?
I made 10 copies of the same thing, and I was going to pass it out this evening, but she passed it out first, so I saw no reason to pass it out a second time. Yes, I would very much, I think it's it's practiced by the city of Little Rock. It's just a copy of what they do. And so we can take 2 of the ideas or 3 of the ideas or alter a couple of the ideas to fit our needs or something. It's just a guideline. It's not a criminal conviction of any kind. But yes, I was going to pass it out.
What I would suggest is come into the next meeting with what you think would be good from all that, and propose that, and we can put all these things on the table.
Right. I'd like to see the mayor put together a group of people that would get off to themselves and go talk and come back with some recommendations. We're not going to get anywhere fighting each other. I don't dislike anybody here. There's no reason as intelligent, educated people why we cannot talk without being a childish reactions.
Yeah. Well, my deal is I would hate to establish committees. In fact, if I put this forward next week, I'm going to ask for 3 readings and we just vote on it that night. I don't want to fight it out again. These folks divided the community by doing this the first time, and I'm not going to put us through 3 readings of this thing again. But I want everybody to go on the record as to whether they're going to stand up for the residents or we're going to look after the dog people. You know, it's one or the other. So. If you've got something you want to propose, bring it there and let's just vote on it. Do that. I'd rather not have a committee. It just drags it out. So, anyway, that's all I've got.
Thank you. Any additional council member comments? City attorney comments?
No comments.
City clerk comments?
Yes, I do, actually. Those of you who are on the advisory committee, there's a meeting scheduled this month on the 21st at the Municipal League at 10 a.m. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. I've got a motion, a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries.